I'd like you to imagine for a moment your favorite work of art. Think for a second. Picture it in your mind. It could be a sculpture, it could be a photograph, it could be a painting. Your favorite work of art. Now I want you to ask yourself, as you imagine it, why it's so special. Why has it endured in your mind? We ask this question about art. In fact, we've been asking this question for centuries, and we haven't answered it perfectly yet. What makes a work of art endure? Is it perhaps that it's merely popular? That so many people actually come to see that work of art and keep coming to see that work of art, that it's special, that it's exceptional, that it endures? Is it possible that in fact it has survived history? That it's in fact transcended the time in which it was created? Even if it was created centuries ago, people keep coming to see it because somehow that work of art in the current moment communicates something to that person. Is it perhaps that it's beautiful, that it offers some lens that we look at that allows us to see beauty in the world and allows us to forget for a moment that there are in fact things that are ugly or scary? Or is it in fact the opposite, that we actually have a work of art that communicates a truth that we may not wish to see, but in fact expands our world and allows us, as we actually look at that truth, to see the world as it is and not to forget that the world has its dark side? Why does a work of art endure? Is it in fact that maybe it's simply about design itself? That there are some principles of design, that there are shapes, that there are colors, that there are frames of reference, that that particular work of art represents so perfectly that we can look at it and say, that's why it's endured? Or is it the opposite? Is it in fact that the work of art has no design whatsoever? In fact, the more you look at it, the more lost you are. And so you keep looking at it, looking for a design that isn't there. And so that art endures. Or is it in fact that the art itself is in somehow grounded in a tradition that we recognize, a school of art? We recognize it, we see it, we've seen other works of art like it, and we go, here's a perfect example. All the features of that tradition are here. And so that work of art has endured. Or is it in fact that it transcends tradition itself? That in fact it's innovative, that it borrows for something that we recognize, but then forces us to see the world differently. It's not a representation of a school, it's the creation of something new. And that's why it endures. Is it perhaps that the art represents an idea, some concept of time or place or community, and it represents that idea so well that in fact we see in that moment the idea come to life. And it comes to life through time, and so it endures. Or is it in fact not an idea, but emotion? That there may be no idea itself in the work of art that's expressed that you can identify, but it expresses emotions so powerfully and elicits such powerful emotions that it endures. Why does a work of art endure? And who decides? Is it the artists themselves, the creators of that art? Or is it in fact the audience itself? If the audience decides, then it's merely about what we experience. If it's the artists who decide, it's merely about what they impose. What in fact makes a work of art endure? This dialogue is one that's been going on, as I mentioned, for centuries. And I'd like to suggest that this dialogue is in fact perfect for thinking about the world of education itself. The fact is, education is art. My name is Marcel Gauthier. I'm head of school of Shanghai American School, and I'm a lifelong educator. I began my teaching career as a teacher of literature and poetry and philosophy. I am a poet. And as I moved through my teaching career and then moved into leadership itself, I continually found that the lens of art provided a perfect language a perfect perspective for thinking about efficacy in education. What makes an education endure for a child? What makes it meaningful? And what is the language we use for talking about it that we can bring day to day to the work we do as teachers or as parents? We've spent a lot of time in the last years talking about education as science. We look at data-driven research. We look at research-based decisions. We look at brain-based research and try to decide what is the best possible way to educate a child so that we can develop brain cells. What's the best possible way to educate a child so that we can arrive at a particular outcome? What particular practice leads to what particular outcome? And it's good that we've done this because for many years education was a bit of a mystery. It rested solely in the hands of a single educator and a group of kids, and it rarely moved beyond the classroom. And education as science allows us to say, yes, there are practices that will lead to better results. But to merely talk about education as science is to actually reduce education to something it's not. There is no perfect equation for education itself. In fact, the best way for a teacher to think about teaching is not to think about his teaching as a science, but to think about it as art. So what makes an exceptional teacher? An exceptional teacher is like an exceptional artist, grounded in his subject area, has a passion for it, lives it, knows everything about it, and also knows everything about how to pass it on, communicate it. An exceptional teacher is grounded in a tradition, but at the same time recognizes that in fact, it's what he brings to the moment with those students that makes that tradition come alive. It's in fact the dialogue between who he is as a person and who the students are in front of him. We know that students respond to authenticity. They don't merely respond to an idea. And so it really doesn't matter if a teacher has a tradition at his fingertips. What really matters is, in that moment, can he or she be authentic such that the students wish to learn, wish to engage, that there's a dialogue between who that teacher is and what it is that he wants to communicate for the students themselves. That's what makes teaching endure. A really excellent teacher, like an excellent artist, has a sense of design. What is it that I want to do today? What kind of reactions do I wish to elicit? In what order? How will I do it? What is the pattern that I'm going to impose? What experience am I going to impose on these students today? You arrive with that in your mind. But an exceptional teacher moves beyond that pattern and has to engage in the moment with the students themselves. How are they responding? What do they experience? What do they offer? In fact, an ideal education, in fact, an education that endures, is the dialogue between how the students respond and what it is that the teacher is imposing. In fact, it's that dialogue that makes an education endure. What about an idea of education? Here's the philosophy that I have. Here is the idea that I wish to impose. Is that all you need? An excellent teacher brings that idea to the table. He knows exactly what he hopes those kids will become. And yet at the same time, if that teacher really isn't aware of who those children are themselves, what they bring to the table in terms of diversity, personality, different ways of learning, and that his idea doesn't shift in dialogue with those students, then there in fact is no dialogue between teacher and student. And the narrative of learning that we wish to see doesn't happen, and the education doesn't endure. If we think about what makes an education enduring for a child, we have to think what in fact a child is looking for in life. And I would argue that a child is looking for in life what we all are looking for in life. They are looking for an opportunity to understand the world around them. They are looking for an opportunity to see patterns in the world, design, beauty, truth. They are looking for opportunities in their lives to feel grounded in the world of which they're going to be a part, to be inspired by that world, to see truth, to see beauty. They're looking for a way not only to understand that world, but to engage with it, to transform it, to challenge it. In fact, if we really ask ourselves what we're hoping our students will experience in education, what we're really thinking about is how do we set our children up in the world such that they not only can engage and thrive, but feel the power to transform it, such that the story they live has staying power. It endures. Education is an art. Thank you.